Welcome you to the next class on the inorganic chemistry of life principles and perspectives. In the previous class we have been talking about the ion transport phenomena in terms of variety of things like uniport, symport, antiport. We also have seen certain ion transport will change the potential, certain ions transport will not change because one ion is going in one direction, other ion is going in another direction having the same charge, etc. Sometimes when it is a H plus, then the pH variation will happen. So, these are all, and we also have seen an example in E. coli how so many different kinds of transports are coupled together. So, how complicated is the ion transport process even for a simple being like an E. coli. Okay, so how do we understand such a phenomena? By taking an example. So, take an example of one of the peptides which is involved in ion transport is gravicidin. Gravicidin, as you can see from this picture, there is 15 amino acids there. Okay, as you can see, some leucines, some tryptophans, some phenylalanes, some tyrosines, all kinds of things are there. It is a 15 amino acid residue. So, it is a kind of a small peptide, not a huge protein, small peptide. Even this peptide I have taught you earlier, primary sequence, that is this one, secondary structure, tertiary structure, etc. If you take those things into consideration, you can see that this particular peptide takes a kind of a turn like this, which is nothing but the helical turn. So, you form a helix kind of a structure here. You can see that this is the structure, the gravicidin A with a helical structure having the same peptide sequence. Now, if this goes and sits inside a membrane, you see this head portion, tail, head and tail, this is lipid and this is 2, so lipid bilayer. So, lipid bilayers are typically the membranes. So, if you insert this gravicidin into this, you can see that green one with the helical. So, you can nicely see that this is very well inserted into this. Now, form a kind of a barrel. So, there is a barrel. It is not of course the simple kind of thing, you have a lot of residues interacting with various things, etc. That will allow the ions to flow through this. So, what is the mechanism? A protein will form a kind of helical structure. This helical structure will span across the two ends of the membrane, on one end which is outside, other end which is inside. So, it is spanning across and then forming this helix as like a kind of a you or pushing a tube through certain kind of a material, that kind of thing. So, you have. So, this is a tube formed by the protein. Okay. So, therefore, the protein obviously is having amino acid lining. So, therefore, you have some amino acid based kind of interactions inside. So, this is used for ion transport. So, now we got one idea as how these would do it, okay, which we did not have earlier, but how peptide. Even proteins, there are bigger size proteins than the peptides, what we have seen gravicidin, these are called porins. These are nothing but transport, they form ion transport channels. Some of these also form gated ion transport channels. I will tell you just in a while. So, this porin peptide, polypeptide or a protein, see it has so many kind of helices, other things, and this will get basically inserted, you see this, and when it is fully inserted you can see all of them. It is not one part, this is one part, this is another part, this is another part, whole thing coming from this. And the gated means that you have allowing in, not allowing in and out through a check. That kind of things are gated channels. And the gate will open under certain conditions, gate will be closed under certain conditions. So, keeping that aside, you can see the porins also do the same kind of thing as this has done gravicidin. In this case only one peptide, so one barrel only, and in case of porins, not one barrel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These may be used for a different ion, these may be used for same ion, different concentrations, variety of things. We are not taking the details of that at this stage because which is out of focus to that. How do you know that these are forming fun channels? So, there are some molecules shown over here, these are the molecules, and if you add these molecules to this, the ion transport will stop, and if you remove these molecules, ion transport will go. So, that means these barrels having the ion transport property, and those barrels are filled by these ones, in other words blocked by these molecules, and these are basically called as the neurotoxins. So, those which prevent the ion transport is the neurotoxins. Now, we understand. So, ion transport, then how a peptide can do, how a big protein can do. We have learned all this in very general way. Now, let us come to some ionophores, biologically important ionophores. So, you have seen earlier in this case the ions are flowing through this, so it is called channel type. If the ion goes in a straight away without such channels, for example, some of these ions here, for example, potassium ion by the nigericin or valinomycin, they are sequestered by this valinomycin, taken in, taken out. In this case, it is taken out. So, this kind of thing is not called a channel. This is the one is channel kind of mechanism, another is the chelation or the carrier kind of a mechanism. So, it chelates, binds and takes it out. So, one is carrier type, other is the channel type. Now, so small molecules having different binding sites can bind to the metal ion and wrap around the metal ion and take across the membrane. Those things are referred as a carrier, and if the carrier molecule is a peptide or a protein, it forms a kind of a channel, and channel is placed across the membrane, and therefore the ions are transported across the membrane through the channel. So, that is called channel kind of mechanism. Is that clear? Carrier mechanism, channel mechanism. I hope you understand. In the carrier, you have an ion, you have a molecule, molecule sequesters, and the whole thing as a complex goes into the cell or out of the cell. In the other case, the molecule forms a spiral and spans across the membrane and then forms a tube-like structure through which the ions will flow from in to out, out to in, whatever be the mechanism is. This is all called channel mechanism. So, carrier mechanism and channel mechanism. So, ionophores like ionomycin dicarboxylate. So, these were small molecular, but these are all biologically important ones, biologically relevant ones too. This is calcium 2 plus. What is the mode? It is a carrier type. Dianomycin, it's a no selectivity between the potassium and sodium, it will be all right, and that is a again carrier mechanism. Monensin, it will be for sodium plus and H plus, but not potassium plus, is a carrier. So, you can see the selectivity here, monensin. So, that molecule is a natural antibiotic, and the nature has synthesized in such a way that it can only bind to sodium plus and not H plus. We will study why is like that in a while as we continue this particular topic on ion transport. Nigericin, potassium and H plus, but not sodium plus. So, monensin is selective for sodium, nigericin is selective for potassium. The same can do the H plus in the reverse direction too. Lacillocin is a calcium carrier. So, some other antibiotic, it has a number, do not worry, it is a potassium. Another antibiotic is a calcium. Okay. A hexadepsipeptide, not a peptide, depsipeptide as a calcium, which is a carrier. Then valinomycin, which is very well known to many people, is a cyclic peptide, is a potassium, is a carrier. Nonactin is a macrotetraline, I will show some of the structures soon, is a carrier. And N-iotin is another cyclohexadepsipeptide, potassium channel. Gramicide, it can be M plus. There are some peptides, trichotoxin, this can form a channel, alamethicin, it can form a channel, sujucacillin, it can form a channel. So, these are gramicide, these are all channel kind of systems. So, channel mechanism, all other ones are carrier mechanism. In a carrier, the ion is bonded by the ionophore from all directions and taken inside the cell or taken out of the cell. So, carrier and channel type. To get more clarity, let us say on the carrier kind of a case, take cyclic ionophores. One example is shown is for the valinomycin, another example is shown in this case is nonactin. So, see this valinomycin is nothing but natural cyclic ionophore, cyclic peptide. Peptide because CONH, CONH, CONH. So, you have all this. this kind of thing. You have other linkers also. Other linkers are also there. It is a cyclic peptide. Okay. So, this is a natural cyclic ionophore, and this is very selective for the potassium. You see that how there are carbonyls. Though in this writing they all look towards inside, you see the crystal structure. In the crystal structure only some of them, this one, the after 2 more, then after. So, only 6 have been protruded inside carbonyls. So, these protruded 6 carbonyls inside will form a core like an octahedral core, and the metal ion is at the center. Now, you can see this is the metal ion, this is your valunomycin. So, this is a valunomycin complex, and such a complex will go through the membrane straight away by concentration difference, diffusion mechanism. So, concentration difference will also result in the potential difference. So, therefore, this is kind of a thing, this you can call it as a carrier. There is another molecule shown over here, this one. So, this is a molecule of the calcium bound nonactin. You can see the structure over there, okay, here, and natural cyclic ionophore, it complexes with the calcium 2 plus, and this molecule is shown over there. So, it is not exactly this way is formed, it is some kind of a folding etc. will come and finally will fold like this, so that it wraps around. So, ion and the peptide is or the molecule is wrapped, the ion and the molecule is wrapped. The top one is for potassium valunomycin, this the one below here is for calcium, is a nonactin. Both are carriers obviously. It is not only cyclic, you can also see some non-cyclic examples. This is an example, perfect example for a non-cyclic, and it is the ionophore called, its short name is monensin, commercial name is monensin. So, you can see some ether-like oxygens, hydroxyl oxygens, ether-like oxygen, hydroxyl oxygens, and at the end carboxylic group. So, this if you see for the sodium, it is binding to all this. Okay. But there is a bit of opening here, this part of it is exposed to the environment. Okay. There is another molecule which is shown, calcimycin, similarly this also binds that. There is another example which is shown for lactulose, this is for sodium. So, such open molecules, when they bind to the ion, there is always a part of the region is exposed. And you know, when it has to go to the membrane, what is membrane property? Is a polar, non-polar. So, if the ion is open, part of the ion sphere is open, ion coordination sphere is open, what is that one? There is hydrophilic. So, therefore, hydrophilic part, how can it go through the membrane? There is no energy is also applied in this case. So, it is only a concentration difference. So, what it happens is, 2 such molecules will join together. You see here, there is one molecule with one ion, sodium. There is another molecule with a sodium ion here. So, you can see centrosymmetry between them, this to this, this to this, etc. So, a centrosymmetric pair of 2 ligands and 2 ions. So, now this is completely closed, this is not open, whereas this part is open. So, it has some hydrophilic region, this does not have hydrophilic. Therefore, this kind of a systems, when you have a non-cyclic systems, most often, not necessarily 100% time, most often when there is an opening of the coordination sphere, it will dimerize and the dimer will pass through the membrane, not the monomer. Okay. In the other case, no dimer is required here, the valunomycin, monomer itself, nonactin, monomer itself, whereas the monensin, lactulose, monensin, all these kind of things, you have the dimer is formed. I hope you understand. Now, in the carrier, I have showed you 2 types. One is where the metal ion is completely sequestered by a cyclic ligand. So, therefore, the overall metal ion positive charge or the hydrophilic region is covered by the hydrophobic exterior, therefore, it can go through the membrane. The second case, non-cyclic ionophore, where the non-cyclic ionophore you have the ligand wrapping around, but not 100%. There are certain region is open up. So, this region of the coordination sphere is a hydrophilic, therefore, this cannot go through a membrane because it is a hydrophobic. Therefore, 2 such half kind of things join together and then go through as a dimer to the things, because the dimer is less exposed to the atmosphere or environment. Okay, having understood the philosophy how these ions are transported, one is by carrier, other is by channel. Now let us look at their affinities. How would we understand? At some stage I said this antibiotic is useful for potassium, this antibiotic for sodium, this for something else. How did we say that? How did we understand that? We said that because experiment shows that, but how do we understand? We have to understand that we have to study certain level of coordination chemistry of these ions and their transport properties. So for that we can synthetically make a molecule of cyclic type, non-cyclic type, and then study their affinity for monovalent ion, divalent ion, and then look for their stability constants and compare with the literature, compare with the natural ones, So our process goes in that direction. First we take simple cases which is called crown ether. So 12 crown 4, crown 4 means there are 4, these oxygens are there, and 12 means there are total atoms, periphery is 12, here total atoms are 18, oxygens are 6, total atoms are 24, oxygens are 8. So you have a 4 atom core, 6 atom core and 8 atom core. So what are these? 12 crown 4, 15 crown 5, which is not shown here, 18 crown 6, 21 crown 7, 24 crown 8, so many things are there. So many kind of examples. Now you can see their diameters going from around 1.3 to 2 to 2.8 to 3.8, something like that. So you can see that they are increasing the size of the thing, and coordination number is also increasing. There are 4 oxygen atoms, 5 oxygen atoms, 6 oxygen atoms, 7 oxygen atoms. Now if you try to see among the ions which are of importance from the alkaline earth, let us look at the alkali ions: lithium ion, sodium ion, potassium ion and rubidium ion. So what is the diameter? 1.38. Is that 1.38 is somewhere in between these two? Absolutely. 1.2 to 1.5. And is 1.94. 1.7 to 2.2 is what? It's somewhere in between. So it's very nice fit. 2.66 is absolutely this. 2.94 somewhat bit loose to this. So you will not get a good. So that means you are looking for a fit between the diameter of the macrocycle versus the diameter of the ion. So there is a size fit. This is an ion pore, this is an ion size. So this is a macrocycle, this is an ion. So therefore you can find a nice match, nice binding. So lithium, 4 oxygens, absolutely perfect. Sodium with 5 oxygens, it will be good. Okay. And then potassium with 6 oxygens, perfect kind of thing. So you can see that they have a size of the pore versus the size of the ion, have a perfect thing. In fact, these kind of crown ethers are used for very selective ion transport or ion reactions in organic synthesis. They will use too as a phase transfer catalyst. Now we will do a little bit of exercise regarding their affinities, regarding their binding constants. Let us look at some binding constant. Okay, Ks is the binding constant in the solvent, whatever it is there, log of this value. So log 10 K value, that means this whatever the value you have on the decimal side, you have to take anti-logarithm and multiplied by 10 power 2. Anti-logarithm of 0.8 multiplied by 10 power 4, like that. So you know, now you understand what is the K. K value is the anti-logarithm of this decimal point multiplied by 10 power of the on the Manteso side. Okay, you take dicyclohexyl 14 crown 4. We have seen a good fit for this is what? A good fit for this is lithium. And here what we are looking as the sodium. Sodium shows some binding strength, potassium shows much less. Why? Because potassium ion is much more bigger than that of the sodium ion, it cannot fit at all. Sodium also cannot fit, but slightly it can interact. Now instead of 14 crown 4, increase the size, 18 crown 6. So the size of the core is increased, the number of oxygens are increased. Now you see this molecule will bind instead of 2.18, 4.08. That means 100-fold greater, 100-fold greater. So, the sodium plus is captured by dicyclohexyl 18 crown 6 to an extent of 10 power 4 something. Potassium is much more, 10 power 6. So what do you say now? So, 10 power 4 versus 10 power 6, 100-fold difference. So, what do you say? It is this molecule has affinity to sodium, affinity to potassium, but selectivity is more towards the potassium, because potassium is binding 100 times better than that is sodium. How 100 is coming? It is 10 power 6, this is 10 power 4. Of course, when you add water, if you take in water, all these things are taken in ethanol. If you take in water, hydration, so every stability will go down. All these molecules, all these ions do not bind give any stable binding. Now come to another one. So, cyclohexyl, take benzo. So, 18 ground 6 showing 4 point, let us say 4, this is showing 5. The difference is not as large as here. Here is 100-fold, here it is not that much less difference is there. Now that is because you have changed from cyclohexyl to benzo, okay, and you have not changed 18 ground 6 at all. So therefore, it is not only the size of the crown ether, not only the number of ligating sites, but also what is there outside. Okay. So, dibenzo, you have a more pi system and you have only alkyl kind of a system that you have. So, therefore, hydrophobicities are also playing a role. So, therefore, hydrophobicity, hydrophilicity of the molecule, core size and the number of ligating centers, all these will play important. Now, go to the dibenzo 21 crown 6. Now, 21 crown 6 becomes too big for sodium. So, 4.4 it became 2.4, 100 times became weaker in binding, and whereas for potassium also it is bigger, but it is weak by about 5 times or something, not even 10 times. Okay, so that you understand by now dibenzo 30 crowns 10 becomes much more bigger. So, all these becomes very weak. Sodium almost does not bind much at all, potassium will bind to much lower extent. Okay. So, similarly 18 crown 6 for sodium 4.3 and potassium 6.1, 100-fold as I told you. In water is no important. Dioxo, this is like adding oxo groups outside, keto groups outside the 18 crown 6 periphery. Then what you are doing? Hydrophilic. Here dicyclohexyl is hydrophobic, dibenzo you have both hydrophobic and van der Waal, and once you come to the dioxo you have a hydrophilic is a keto group, it will attract the water, therefore your binding strengths have gone down. Just compare this with 18 ground 6, 18 ground 6 4.32. So, 2,6 dioxo 18 ground 6 2.5. Similarly, this has fallen down. Okay. And let us not too much worry about this side of it. Then 1,4 dioxo 19 ground 6 again. So, what are we finding? The size of the core, the number of heteroatoms and the groups present outside, whether they are hydrophobic, hydrophilic, all these play important role. That means when the nature has synthesized all these antibiotics, it has taken an optimal of all these. Let us take another system which is referred as a cryptand system. The cryptand system is like this, 2 nitrogens connected by these ones. So, you can see 111, 211, that is the number that you have, okay, 221, 222, etc. So, you have the oxygens are coming from each strand. So, there is a strap between this nitrogen and nitrogen 1, there is a second strand, third strand. There are 3 strands are connecting between the 2 nitrogens. So, therefore, it is more or less 3-dimensionally arranged with respect to this. So, therefore, it will wrap around the any ion from all direction. So, this you can easily make out from M and N. Okay. So, 222 it has a 6, 221 has got 2 plus 2 plus 1. So, that is 5 atoms, etc. Okay. So, so these are the kinds of things. Now, having seen this, let us try to look at this one. This is 111 will have only 3 atoms. Okay, 211 has got 211 will have 4 atoms. 221 has got 5 atoms. 222 has got 6 atoms, etc., etc. Now let us look at these ones. This is not important. So you take 211. There are 4 oxygen atoms in this. You see that lithium, absolutely perfect. We have seen earlier when you have 4 atoms and when you have a crown 4, it is perfect. It is giving very high binding. Then you take the sodium, not so much fit, and all others are not fit at all. Now go to 221. Now you have 5 atoms are surrounding, 5 oxygen atoms are there. Now once you have the 5 oxygen atoms, the chain length is also increased. So therefore pore size increase, lithium becomes weak, lithium becomes loose rather. Lithium is now loose fit, not a good fit. But whereas you go to the sodium, this becomes a strong fit. Here lithium is good fit, sodium is not fit. Here is lithium is not fit, sodium is fit, and potassium etc. is not fit. Now go to the 222, then lithium is not fit, sodium is not fit, potassium is fit, because 10 power 5. 322, that will have 3 plus 2 plus 2, that is called 7 oxygen atoms. Not only number of oxygen atoms, even the core size will also increase. No binding much, no binding much, no binding much, even potassium cannot bind, nothing. So that means increasing the number of atoms to 8, 7 and so huge size is no use at all. Okay. So similarly 332 means 3 plus 3 plus 2, that is 6 plus 2, 8 atoms, almost nothing. So now you can see the 221 is good for sodium, 211 is good for lithium, 222 is good for the potassium. So lithium, sodium, potassium. So like a diagonal. Here 4 atoms, 5 atoms, 6 atoms. Okay. The ion, the core size is smaller, little bigger, much bigger. So now you can understand how this is really working. Similarly, one can see the diionic or bivalent cation too. I mentioned to you earlier the changing the periphery with some hydrophobic etc. will also influence this. Okay, this is the 37 which is over here, 1, 2 plus 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 kind of thing, and this particular thing is showing 5.4 for sodium and 5.7 for potassium and 3.8 for rubidium. Now if you go to the next one you have, this is only 3 and this is 5, so you have increased. So when you increase, this is decreasing basically, you can see the values quite much going down. So on the other hand, if you take 222 which you have seen on the previous slide, it has a maximum at the potassium, okay, and 221 will have. So therefore the size increase, all these are indeed affect a lot. So let us see a case where we have only one benzene ring and there are cases 2 benzene rings. So take one benzene ring here, 222B, 222, 2B, 2B. See the potassium, it does not change much, but barium it changes by 3 orders of magnitude almost. So therefore sodium to potassium to barium ratio is become 1, here 1:100. So you take instead of that C8, no oxygens at all, only all 8 are carbons. That means only 4 oxygens and nothing. Then the potassium will come down, barium will come much down, so it becomes potassium selective as compared to the barium. Now instead you put 2 methyl groups, 1 methyl group here, 1 methyl group here, 2, 2 and 3. So that gives more or less similar for the potassium, but for the barium it is bigger because it is opened up, and therefore again it inverts the monovalent ratio for potassium to barium. So these are some of the things which nature has basically balanced in order to get the specificity for the antibiotics that are being naturally synthesized. Take an example, nonactin. For potassium 3.6, barium 1.7 and the ratio is 80. So therefore this can take mainly monovalent potassium but not the barium ion in this case. So now what we are trying to look at is that the ion binding properties, preferences are dependent on how many ligating centers are there, what is the core size of the molecule, and whether the exterior is hydrophobic, hydrophilic, partially hydrophobic, partially hydrophilic, and therefore these all determine the the selectivity between the sodium versus the among the monovalent cations, among the monovalent versus divalent as shown in this particular case. You see that this is divalent 2 plus. So, K plus and 2 plus. So, therefore, this becomes almost nothing. So, this means this is more favored for barium, this is more favored for barium, this is neither good for anything, this is more favored for potassium, this is more favored for barium, this is more favored for potassium. So, the numerator greater value is for potassium, denominator greater value is for the barium divalent. So, that is how the nature has tried to adjust these things. We will continue with this ion transport in the next class with the by looking into certain additional systems. Thank you very much.